Hello everyone, welcome back to Cruel and Unusual Storytime. I am your host, Simon Dexter. As you can tell, we are in a different location than usual. I am house-sitting, which I've done before, which means I can be as loud as the fuck I want. And you're gonna hear an awkward echo. That's okay, because I'm not gonna be speaking that loud all the time. Anyway, we are taking a quick break from Patrick's diabetes just because it's long and exhausting. So we're just going to do a few quick little creepypastas, then we're going to get right back to it. And this week's suggestion was from Alison Aveniri. As you know, they've suggested a few things for me. And the suggestion was actually for just Widemouth. I could not find just Widemouth, so this is Mr. Widemouth. I'm going to assume they're the same thing. If they're not, I'm sorry. Find the link to the right story and send it to me later. But for now, we're reading this one. Hope you're all ready. So, sit back, relax, hopefully ignore the echo and the fish tank, and let's read Mr. Widemouth. Forgot about my weird feedback thing. I'm going to be speaking a lot more gently now so I don't blow my mic. So, just so you know how much work I put into this channel sometimes, I realized a big reason a lot of my other videos used to lag quite a bit, and I realized it's kind of Creepypasta Wikia's fault. It would make my computer slow down for whatever reason. So I had to copy and paste the entire story to get it on a Word program. So I did my best to not peek, but unfortunately, in order to pay attention to copy and pasting, I had to because it wouldn't scroll down. So, anyway, at least this way I should be able to see every single tiny little error because it's on a Word program now. During my childhood, my family was like a drop of water in a vast river. Did not realize I was walking in on an AP English assignment. Okay. Never remaining in one location for long. We settled in Rhode Island when I was 8, and there we remained until I went to college in Colorado Springs, which is as far away from Rhode Island as you can get. Most of my memories are rooted in Rhode Island, but there are fragments in the attic of my brain which belong to various homes we had lived in when I was much younger. Most of these memories are unclear and pointless, chasing after another boy in the backyard of a house in North Carolina, trying to build a raft to float on the creek behind the apartment we rented in Pennsylvania, and so on. But there was one set of memories which remained as clear as glass, as though they were just made yesterday. I often wondered whether these memories are simply lucid dreams produced by the long sickness I had experienced that spring, but in my heart I knew they were real. We were living in a house just outside the bustling metropolis of New Vineyard, Maine, population 643, no one asked. It was a large structure, especially for a family of 3. There were a number of rooms that I didn't see in the 5 months we resided there. In some ways, it was a waste of space, but it was the only house on the market at the time, at least within an hour's commute to my father's place of work. You could just say job. The days after my 5th birthday, attended by my parents alone, I came down with a fever. The doctor said I had, medical jargon, mononucleosis. I butchered that to hell, but whatever. Which meant no rough play and more fever for at least another 3 weeks. It was a horrible thing. It was horrible timing to be bedridden. We were in the process of packing our things to move to Pennsylvania already, and most of my things were already packed away in boxes, leaving my room barren. My mother brought me ginger ale and books several times a day, and these served the function of being my primary form of entertainment for the next few weeks. Boredom always loomed around the next corner, waiting to rear its ugly head and compound my misery. I don't exactly recall how I met Mr. Widemouth. I think it was about a week after I was diagnosed with mono. Also, why didn't you just say it was mono? I would have gotten that much better. My first memory of the small creature was asking him if he had a name. He told me to call him Mr. Widemouth because his mouth was large. In fact, everything about him was large in comparison to his body, his head, his eyes, his crooked ears, but his mouth was by far the largest. So is he, hallucinating? What the fuck is this? He looked kind of like a Furby, I said, as he flipped through one of my books. Mr. Widemouth stopped and gave me a puzzled look. Furby? What's a Furby? He asked. Monsters in and of themselves. I shrugged. You know, the toy, a little robot with big ears. You can pet and feed them almost like a real pet. Oh, Mr. Widemouth resumed his activity. You don't need one of those. They aren't the same as having a real friend, says the probably a hallucination. I remember Mr. Widemouth disappearing every time my mother stopped by to check in on me. I lay under your bed, he later explained. I don't want your parents to see me because I'm afraid they won't let us play anymore. We didn't do much during those first few days. Mr. Widemouth just looked at my books, fascinated by the stories and pictures they contained. The third and fourth morning after I met him, he greeted me with a large smile on his face. I have a new game we can play, he said. We have to wait until after your mother comes to check on you because she can't see us play it. It's a secret game. I don't like where this is going, especially after what I just read. After my mother delivered more books and soda at the usual time, Mr. Widemouth slipped out from under the bed and tugged my hand. We have to go to the room at the end of this hallway, he said. I objected at first as my parents had forbidden me to leave my bed without their permission, but Mr. Widemouth persisted until I gave in. The room in question has no furniture or wallpaper. Its only distinguishing feature was a window opposite the doorway. Mr. Widemouth darted across the room and gave the window a firm push, flinging it open. He then beckoned me to look out at the ground below. We were on the second story of the house, but it was on a hill, and from this angle the drop was farther than 2 stories due to the incline. Oh, that sounds very dangerous. Please don't make him jump. I like to play pretend up here, Mr. Widemouth explained. I pretended that there is a big, soft trampoline below this window, and I jump. If you pretend hard enough, you bounce back up like a feather. I want you to try. Don't try. Your mind is trying to kill you. Shit. Scrolled too much. Come back. I was a 5-year-old with a fever, so only a hint of skepticism darted through my thoughts as I looked down and considered the possibilities. Well, to be fair, yeah, a 5-year-old with a fever is not really going to think this through, so this doesn't seem like a good idea at all. It's a long drop, I said. But that's all part of the fun. It wouldn't be fun if it was only a short drop. If it were that way, you may as well just bounce on a real trampoline. I toyed with the idea, picturing myself falling through the air only to bounce back to the window, on something unseen by human eyes. But the realist in me prevailed. See, this is a smart kid, thank God. Maybe some other time, I said. I don't know if I have enough imagination, I could get hurt. Kinda logical for a 5-year-old, but it's good enough for me. Mr. Widemouth's face contorted into a snarl, but only for a moment. Anger gave way to disappointment. If you say so, he said. He spent the rest of the day under my bed, quiet as a mouse. The following morning, Mr. Widemouth arrived holding a small box. I want to teach you how to juggle, he said. Here are some things you can use to practice before I start giving you lessons. I looked into the box. It was full of knives. Don't roll with the knives. That doesn't end well when you're 5 with a fever. My parents will kill me, I shouted, horrified that Mr. Widemouth had brought knives into my room. Objects that my parents would never even allow me to touch. I'll be sipped and grounded for like a year. I had sorry, but I'm kind of enjoying the writing. It was kind of hokey at first, but it's growing on me. Mr. Widemouth frowned. It's fun to juggle with these. I want you to try it. I pushed the box away. I can't. I'll get in trouble. Knives aren't safe to just throw in the air. Mr. Widemouth's frown deepened into a scowl. He took the box of knives and slid under my bed, remaining there for the rest of the day. I began to wonder how often he was under me. Probably all the time. I started having trouble sleeping after that. Mr. Widemouth often woke me up at night, saying he put a real trampoline under the window, a big one that I couldn't see in the dark. Mr. Widemouth is an asshole. I always declined and tried to go back to sleep, but Mr. Widemouth persisted. Sometimes he stayed by my side until early in the morning, encouraging me to jump. Is he like an allegory is probably not the right word I'm using here, but is he supposed to be symbolizing suicidal tendencies? Just in a totally different way? Because that would be kind of cool. I don't know. Let's read this till the end before I make any... He's 5, so he probably shouldn't be having those tendencies anyway, but it'd be kind of cool if that was the case. Shit, lost my spot. There we go. Okay, sorry. He wasn't so fun to play with anymore. I'd say not. My mother came in one morning and told me I had the permission to walk around outside. She thought the fresh air would be good for me, especially after being confined to my room for so long. No kidding. Ecstatic, I put on my sneakers and trotted out to the back porch, yearning for the feeling of sun on my face. Mr. Widemouth was waiting for me. "I have something I want you to see," he said. I must have given him a weird look, because he then said, "It's safe, I promise." You asked him to jump out a window and wanted him to juggle knives. I don't trust anything he says. I followed him to the beginning of the deer trail, which ran through the woods behind the house. "This is an important path," he explained. "I've had a lot of friends about your age. When they were ready, I took them down this path to a special place. You aren't ready yet, but one day I hope to take you there." Okay, when I was copying and pasting, I kind of peeked at the end, so I kind of know where this is going to some degree. I returned to the house, wondering what kind of place lay beyond the trail. 2 weeks after I met Mr. Widemouth, the last load of our things had been packed into a moving truck. I would be on the cab of the truck, sitting next to my father for the long drive to Pennsylvania. I considered telling Mr. Widemouth that I would be leaving, but even at 5 years old, I was beginning to suspect that perhaps the creature's intention were not to my benefit. Yeah, no shit. Despite what he said otherwise, for this reason I decided to keep my departure a secret. You'd think he'd notice with the packing, but I don't know, he's some weird little goblin creature, what the hell does he know? My father and I were in the truck at 4 a.m. He was hoping to make it to Pennsylvania by lunchtime, tomorrow with the help of an endless supply of coffee and a 6-pack of energy drinks. He seemed more like a man who was about to run a marathon, rather than the one who was about to spend 2 days sitting still. "Early enough for you?" my father asked with a hint of sympathy, with a question mark at the end of that instead of at the end of the actual question. But whatever, I'll ignore it. I nodded and placed my head against the window, hoping for some sleep before the sun came up. I felt my father's hand on my shoulder. "This is the last move, son, I promise." That's a lie. I used to have to go to Rhode Island. "I know it's hard for you, as sick as you've been. Once Daddy gets promoted, we could settle down and you can make friends. Maybe." I opened my eyes as we backed out of the driveway. I saw Mr. Widemouth's silhouette in my bedroom window. He stood motionless until the truck was about to turn on the main road. He gave a pitiful little wave goodbye, steak knife in his hand. I didn't wave back. Years later I returned to our new vineyard. The piece of land our house stood upon was empty except for the foundation, as the house was burned down a few years ago after my family left. Out of curiosity, I followed the deer trail that Mr. Widemouth had shown me. Part of me expected him to jump out from behind a tree and scare the living bejesus out of me, but I felt that Mr. Widemouth was gone, somehow tied to the house that no longer existed. The trail ended at the New Vineyard Memorial Cemetery. I noticed that many of the tombstones belonged to children. And that, everybody, was Mr. Widemouth. I will say, although it started with like a really super I just got out of a creative writing class opening, the story itself was actually really good, frankly. What was right with this? Well, I actually really like the concept of Mr. Widemouth. He's a very different monster than I've seen. He's got kind of like the misguided imaginary friend thing going on. It is slightly less obvious at the beginning, except for the fact he's kind of funny looking. But I like that quite a bit. He was a very interesting character, and I liked that they... And I did kind of feel like a weird link to suicide, but that might have just been me, most likely. But I don't know. His concept was just interesting, and I liked that he was just trying to have fun, but obviously everything he did was dangerous. And he was creepy in his own way. I really liked that. I liked the setting. And the writing was actually really good when it wasn't being super poetic. Man, is there anything wrong with this story? Not really. Not that I can think of, anyway. Yeah, I can't think of anything really wrong with the story, so that's a first. I mean, I don't know, I guess if he had done a bit more, that would have been kind of cool, but I think it was paced perfectly, so. Go figure. Okay, so, yeah, that's it, I guess. I actually stumped. I lost words. That was that good. Bravo. Bravo. Cool. Okay, so as you can probably guess, I'm going to try and take a advantage of this space. I'm going to record a few more episodes a day if I can, and I will. Guess you will see me on Sunday, everyone. You have a good next couple days, folks. See you real soon.